Jake's parrot, Remy, kept echoing a four-word phrase that seemed out of place. Driven by curiosity, Jake began to investigate the bird's history, hoping to decode the enigmatic chant. As he pieced together the puzzle, the truth he uncovered was beyond anything he'd imagined. He had no other choice but to immediately call 911 and get the police involved. "Meet me up north! Meet me up north! Meet me up north!" From the moment Jake adopted his pet parrot Remy, it started to repeat these couple of words every single day at least a couple of times. At first, Jake was just happy that his pet could actually learn words, but he had no idea where he had picked this up. A parrot did not learn words just out of nowhere. It needed some kind of reference. All he could think of was what he heard on the TV. All through then, Jake himself must have missed that moment, but in all honesty, Jake did not really care where Remy got the words from. All he wanted right now was for the parrot to stop saying them. Lou, he felt like he was going completely insane hearing them, over and over, every single day, almost every single hour. Jake had tried everything to teach Remy something new or to get him to stop talking altogether, but nothing seemed to work. The parrot seemed determined to repeat these words forever. But why? Jake could not get the words out of his head. He even started to hear them in his dreams. Jake thought it was getting so bad that he even heard them when he was walking in the street. But then he realized it was actually somebody who he passed on the street, and it immediately stopped him in his tracks. The person who spoke the words told them to somebody who walked away from him immediately afterward. And when the man noticed that Jake was only staring for a second, he quickly started to pace from him. Jake could see from his facial expression that he was not happy to be overheard. Jake felt like this was something he should not get involved with, but the fact that this spoke the same words as his parrot, there had to be a connection. And so, ignoring his own reservations, Jake decided to go after the man and ask him what he meant by "meet me in north." But the man clearly had no intention of talking to him. He tried to ignore it at first, but when he got so foolishly close to the man, he turned around and Jake suddenly felt the sharp point of a knife pressed against his stomach. "I would walk away if I were you, if you know what's good for you." And as you might expect, Jake was not curious enough to potentially give his life for this. He put his hands up and quickly took a couple of steps back, profusely apologizing to the man. The individual quickly put the knife away again and started to pace away into an alleyway. Jake was left with so many questions, but he also knew that there was not really a way to find the answers he was so desperately craving. But what he did know now was that there was most likely more to the words his parrot kept repeating. There was still a lot that he did not know at all, but he was determined to figure out the truth. And this search started with a lot of searching online. There had to be something to be found on there that could give him more information. And after a lot of searching, Jake actually found something sort of useful. He came across a Reddit post. The poster asked a question to the Reddit dedicated to his city. He had overheard multiple people saying the phrase, "meet me in north." He wanted to know what it meant, seeing how the city did not have an identified north. The post had sadly gotten almost no traction except for two people who claimed to have heard it before as well, but had no idea what it meant. But the fact that there was seemingly no answer to be found here did not deter Jake. He actually quickly sent a message to the account that posted the question. His parrot was shouting the words in the background while Jake was waiting for an answer. It already did not bother him anymore. It only bothered him that he did not know where the words came from. He could not help but be afraid that the place he picked it up was not exactly something meant to see the light of day. Luckily, Jake did not have to think about this for all that long, as the person posting the question on Reddit quickly responded. Jake had asked him where he heard the words and what kind of people spoke it, and this confirmed all the suspicions that Jake had, mainly that the people who spoke these words were looking to be up to no good. The Reddit poster had heard the words near his home. The neighborhood was actually more in the south of the big town. If you're looking at a standard map, Jake actually lived in the next neighborhood. So what could they possibly mean by north? He could not imagine that they wanted to meet so far away from where they were talking. Jake thought that he had heard enough from the Reddit poster at this point and wanted to thank him and say goodbye. But the man was not done with him, as he had now gotten really curious about the subject as well. He had kind of forgotten about it in the past couple of days, but now that curiosity had been completely awoken again. The story about Jake's parrot fascinated the Reddit poster, whose real name was Matthew, and the fact that Jake had heard the words in a nearby neighborhood confirmed that there was really something going on here, and he wanted to help Jake figure out what it was exactly. So they decided to meet up that very same day. It did not take long for the pair to come up with a plan. It might be a bit risky, but they believed that it would be fine. They wanted to start walking through the neighborhood the whole afternoon the next day, trying to find any individuals talking to each other. They hoped that they would pick up somebody saying, "Meet me up north again." In a best-case scenario, they wanted to attempt to follow that person as well. Jake had no intention of doing this as he considered it to be too dangerous, but Matthew did not feel any hesitation for this, and Jake was not going to stop him if it meant getting more answers. And so it happened. The next afternoon, both Jake and Matthew started to patrol the streets and pretended they were just jogging, but they were keeping their eyes peeled for people talking amongst themselves, and it did not take long before they found them. Of course, the pair pretended to be exhausted and took a break near the people having a conversation. The sun was beginning to dip, casting long shadows on the pavement. As Jake and Matthew continued their jog, they approached a pair of men engrossed in a hushed conversation. Just as they neared, one of the men uttered the phrase, "Meet me up north." Jake's heart raced. This was the very phrase Remy had been repeating. They had stumbled upon a lead. The two men seemed to sense they had been overheard. Without another word, they split, heading in opposite directions. Jake skidded to a stop, glancing between the retreating figures. A decision had to be made quickly. Which one should they follow? The weight of the choice pressed heavily on the duo. Without missing a beat, Matthew locked onto one of the men, the one with a leather jacket, and began tailing him. His strides were long and purposeful, his focus unwavering. Jake watched as Matthew's form grew smaller in the distance, torn between joining the chase and staying put. Jake's mind raced. Should he follow Matthew and back him up, or would that draw too much attention? The streets were growing darker, and the risks were mounting. He could feel the weight of Remy's words, the urgency of the situation, but he also knew the dangers of diving headfirst into the unknown. Matthew, meanwhile, was a man on a mission. He kept a safe distance, using the evening shadows to his advantage. Every time the man he was following glanced back, Matthew would blend into the surroundings, becoming just another jogger in the evening haze. The trail was heating up, and Matthew was determined to see where it led. The journey back home felt longer than usual for Jake. Each step was heavy with worry, and the familiar surroundings did little to ease his mind. He replayed the day's events, wondering if they had bitten off more than they could chew. The silence of his home was a stark contrast to the day's adrenaline, and it only intensified his concern for Matthew. Inside, Remy's voice echoed through the quiet house. "Meet me up north," the parrot repeated, its voice a haunting reminder of the mystery they were entangled in. Jake tried to distract himself, but every utterance from Remy only tightened the knot of anxiety in his stomach. The bird, oblivious to the gravity of its words, continued its relentless chant. Jake pulled out his phone, sending a flurry of texts to Matthew. "Are you okay? Where are you? Please respond." Each message was met with a deafening silence. The scene tick never appeared, and the minutes felt like hours. Jake paced the room, glancing at his phone every few seconds, hoping for a sign of life from his friend. As the hours dragged on, Jake's mind began to conjure up a series of grim scenarios. Had Matthew been caught? Was he in danger? The unknown was a breeding ground for Jake's worst fears. He imagined shadowy figures, confrontations in dimly lit alleys, and Matthew being cornered. Each imagined scenario was worse than the last. Suddenly, Jake's phone buzzed to life. The familiar ringtone cut through the silence, and Jake lunged for it. It was Matthew. "Hey, Jake," came the voice, tinged with exhaustion and a hint of disappointment. Relief washed over Jake, the weight of the past hours lifting slightly. They were still in the thick of the mystery, but for now, at least they were both safe. The soft glow of headlights pierced the evening darkness, signaling Matthew's return. Jake's heart raced as he peered through the window, watching Matthew's familiar silhouette emerge from the car. The door opened slowly, revealing a weary but unharmed Matthew. Their eyes met a mix of relief and lingering questions hanging in the air. Once inside, Matthew sank into the couch, taking a deep breath before beginning his tale. "I followed him for blocks," he began. "But the industrial terrain, it was like a maze." He described the winding paths, the dilapidated buildings, and the eerie silence that enveloped the area. "I was close, but then he vanished. It was as if he knew the terrain better than his own home." Matthew's story took a more mysterious turn as he described a rusted fence surrounding a particular section of the terrain. "There was a hole," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper, just big enough for a person. He recounted watching the man slip through, disappearing into the forbidden zone. The secrecy of the man's actions hinted at something significant hidden beyond the fence. The duo sat in contemplation, the weight of the day's events pressing down on them. That terrain, Jake mused. It's been abandoned for years. Why would he go there? Matthew nodded in agreement. There's something there, something they don't want others to find. The industrial area, once a symbol of the city's prosperity, now held a new enigmatic significance. As the night deepened, Jake and Matthew delved into the mystery of the phrase, "Meet me up north." What if north isn't a direction? Jake pondered aloud. What if it's a code or a metaphor? Matthew leaned in, intrigued. A metaphor for what? The question hung in the air, challenging them to unravel its meaning. The puzzle of north was far from solved, but the duo was more determined than ever to uncover its secrets. The industrial area, once bustling with activity, now stood silent and forlorn. Buildings, their paint chipped and windows broken, cast long, haunting shadows. Nature had begun to reclaim the land, with weeds sprouting through cracks and vines creeping up walls. The air was thick with a sense of abandonment, and every footstep echoed eerily, amplifying the desolation. As Jake and Matthew navigated the terrain, a rusted fence caught their attention. Upon closer inspection, they found a hole, worn away by time and perhaps frequent use. It beckoned them, promising answers to the mysteries that plagued their minds. The hole, though silent, spoke volumes, hinting at secrets that lay beyond. Matthew paused, his earlier encounter weighing heavily on him. "I saw him go through here," he whispered, his voice tinged with apprehension. The memory of the man's swift disappearance into the forbidden zone made him uneasy. "I didn't dare follow then," he admitted, looking to Jake for understanding. The risks were evident, but so was their thirst for answers. Under the dim light of a street lamp, the duo sat, piecing together the puzzle. "What if north is a landmark or a building name?" Jake proposed. Matthew nodded, adding, "Or maybe it's symbolic, representing something hidden or underground." The possibilities seemed endless, and each theory brought with it a new set of questions, deepening the enigma of north. Determined to find more concrete leads, Jake and Matthew turned to the vast world of the internet. They scoured old city plans, factory histories, and even local legends related to the industrial terrain. Hours flew by as they delved into digital archives, searching for any clue that might shed light on the significance of the mysterious phrase and the desolate area it pointed to. While sifting through a digital archive of old city businesses, Jake's eyes caught a listing that piqued his interest. "Look at this," he said, pointing to an old advertisement for a freezer manufacturer that once dominated the industrial terrain. The logo that was faded over time and depicted a compass with its needle pointing north. The connection was tenuous, but it was a lead. Matthew leaned in, studying the advertisement. "What if north isn't a direction at all?" he mused. "Think about it. Freezers, cold, north. It's often used to describe cold places." Jake nodded, the wheels turning in his head. "So, meet me up north could mean meet me where it's cold?" The theory was chilling, both in its implications and its ingenuity. Speculation was one thing, but they needed concrete evidence. "We have to see it for ourselves," Jake declared. Matthew agreed. "We need to find out if there's anything unusual about that freezer factory." The digital breadcrumbs had led them to a potential breakthrough, but they needed to physically explore the terrain to confirm their suspicions. The duo decided that the cover of the night would be their best ally. The darkness would provide them with the concealment they needed to navigate the industrial area without drawing attention. Equipped with flashlights and a sense of purpose, they set out, the moonlight guiding their path and the stars bearing witness to their quest. Approaching the fence, the familiar hole loomed before them, an entryway to the unknown. Jake took a deep breath, his heart pounding in his chest. "Ready?" he whispered. Matthew nodded, determination evident in his eyes. One by one, they slipped through the gap, embarking on an infiltration that promised answers but also held untold dangers. Once inside the industrial terrain, Jake and Matthew sought refuge in the shadows. The darkness was both their cloak and their ally. From their hidden vantage points, they observed occasional figures moving about, their silhouettes distorted by the dim light. Each movement heightened their senses, reminding them of the risks they were taking. Amidst the sea of derelict structures, one building stood out. Its windows emitted a soft amber glow, contrasting starkly with its darkened neighbours. The light, though faint, was like a beacon in the night, drawing the duo's attention. "That's got to be it," Matthew whispered, pointing towards the structure. Jake nodded in agreement, sensing the importance of their find. As they made their way towards the illuminated building, the journey was fraught with danger. More than once, they had to duck behind machinery or press themselves against walls as figures passed by, their conversations a low murmur in the night. Each close encounter left them with bated breath, the palpable tension making their hearts race. Upon closer inspection, the building's facade bore the faded remnants of a logo, hinting at its past as a freezer factory. The structure, though worn by time, still held an imposing presence. Its tall windows and large doors suggested it was once a hub of activity. Now it stood as a silent sentinel, its secrets guarded within. Seeking a clearer understanding of the building's interior, Jake and Matthew searched for a vantage point. They found a partially broken window on the building's side, offering a discreet peek inside. Cautiously they approached, peering through the gap. The sights that met their eyes were both intriguing and puzzling, setting the stage for the next phase of their investigation. From their concealed vantage point, Jake and Matthew observed the factory's interior. Shadows of people moved hurriedly, their actions deliberate and covert. Machines, long thought to be obsolete, hummed to life, their purpose unclear. The duo exchanged glances, realizing they were witnessing activities that weren't meant for outside eyes. Recognizing the need for proof, Matthew discreetly pulled out his phone, adjusting the settings for low light. Jake kept watch as Matthew captured photos and short video clips of the mysterious operations. Each click and buzz of the phone felt deafening in the silence, but the evidence was invaluable. Aware of the potential dangers of their position, Jake whispered, "We need to get out, now." Matthew nodded, pocketing his phone. They mapped a mental route, identifying potential hiding spots and exits. The plan was simple: move swiftly, stay silent, and avoid any confrontations. Executing their escape was a test of nerve and agility. Every footstep felt like a potential alarm, every distant conversation a threat. They ducked behind crates, slid between gaps, and paused to listen for any signs of discovery. With each passing moment, the exit grew closer, but so did the risk of being caught. Finally, they emerged from the industrial terrain, the night air cool against their sweat-drenched faces. They retreated to a safe distance, ensuring they were well out of sight. Panting and adrenaline-fueled, they took a moment to process the gravity of their discovery and the narrow escape they had just made. Still catching his breath, Jake pulled out his phone and dialed 911. The operator's calm voice contrasted sharply with the urgency of the situation. "We've discovered suspicious activities at the old industrial terrain," Jake relayed, his voice shaking slightly. He provided their location and described the evidence they had captured. Within minutes, the distant wail of sirens grew louder. Police cars, their lights flashing in the night, converged on the area with impressive speed. Jake and Matthew watched from a distance, their hearts still racing as officers prepared to move in on the terrain. With precision and coordination, the police approached the rusted gate of the industrial terrain. Using bolt cutters and sheer force, they breached the barrier, creating an entry point for the team. The once silent night was now filled with the sounds of authority and action. As officers flooded the area, the once covert operations inside the factory were thrust into the spotlight. Shouts echoed as individuals were apprehended, their attempts to flee thwarted by the police's swift response. The scene was a whirlwind of activity, with officers uncovering the extent of the criminal operations. Once the initial chaos subsided, Jake and Matthew were approached by detectives. They handed over the digital evidence they had captured and detailed their experience, from Remy's repeated phrase to their daring infiltration. Their statement, combined with the evidence, painted a clear picture of the clandestine activities that had been unfolding in the heart of the city. As the police delved deeper into the factory, they unearthed a sprawling criminal network. Hidden compartments, secret rooms and coded documents revealed that the old freezer factory was the epicenter of a vast illicit operation. The scale and sophistication of the network were staggering, hinting at its deep roots within the city's underbelly. Room after room, the police discovered caches of stolen goods. From priceless artworks to high-end electronics, the variety was immense. Each item told a story of theft, smuggling, and black market dealings. The sheer volume of the loot was a testament to the operation's audacity and reach. In a secluded section of the factory, officers stumbled upon cages filled with exotic animals, destined for the illegal pet trade. Among them were parrots, eerily reminiscent of Remy. The discovery hinted at a dark chapter in Remy's past, suggesting that he too was once a part of this sinister trade before finding his way to Jake. As news of the operation broke, the city was engulfed in shock and disbelief. The old freezer factory, a relic of the past, had harboured a dark secret right under everyone's noses. The community grappled with the revelation, the story dominating headlines and sparking heated discussions across town. In the aftermath, Jake and Matthew were hailed as heroes. Their bravery, curiosity and determination led to the unmasking of a criminal empire. The city's officials publicly commended them, and their story became a beacon of hope and resilience. Through their actions, they had not only saved Remy, but had also dealt a significant blow to the city's underworld. Almost overnight, Jake, Matthew and even Remy became the subjects of intense media attention. Reporters, photographers and news crews camped outside Jake's home, eager for a scoop on the duo who had uncovered the criminal circuit in the old freezer factory. Interviews, features and special reports chronicled their adventure, turning them into household names. As the days passed, the city's gratitude became more and more evident. Banners were raised and impromptu parades were organised in their honour. The mayor even held a special ceremony, presenting Jake and Matthew with keys to the city. Their bravery and tenacity had not only exposed a criminal empire, but also restored a sense of security among the residents. Remy, the parrot with the repetitive phrase, became an unexpected star. His words, once a source of annoyance, were now celebrated as the clue that started it all. Children mimicked his chant, and local businesses even created merchandise in his honour. Remy's story was a testament to the idea that sometimes the most unexpected sources can lead to the most significant discoveries. In the quiet moments between the celebrations and interviews, Jake and Matthew often found themselves reflecting on their journey. Who would have thought, Jake mused one evening, that Remy's words would lead us to uncover such a massive secret? Matthew nodded, adding, "It's the unlikely events, the small coincidences that sometimes change the course of our lives." As the media frenzy subsided and life began to return to normal, Jake, Matthew and Remy found themselves at the end of an unexpected chapter in their lives. They had faced dangers, unravelled mysteries, and emerged as heroes. But now, they looked forward to quieter days, cherishing the bond they shared and the peace they had helped restore to their city.